Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Rob Browne here with you on this Friday college roundtable for the 3rd of March. And, man, there's stuff happening so fast. We got a great lineup today. Jason Caldwell inside the Auburn Tigers checks in. In the Southwest Conference office, the Big 12 office, now on the National Football Foundation Writers and Baseball Writers of America. The intern, William Halliday, should be checking in about quarter after in the second hour, along with Coach Matt Dean. We're going to be covering a whole lot today. You're hearing a lot about ACC, what's going to happen to that league. That shot over the bow from Florida State's no different than what happened a year ago. Clemson has rumbled a little bit because those schools feel like they're doing a lot of the heavy lifting for the conference, and they'd like to get more money. I don't blame them. And I keep asking this question. We're going to get in that today with our guest. The grant of rights deal the ACC has goes out to 2036. That's another 14 seasons. Why they can't renegotiate that is beyond me. When you look at the money that the Big Ten is getting, certainly adding Southern Cal and UCLA, they think it's going to help by giving them 70% of the footprint of their conference. 70% of the TVs in America is in their footprint, geographical footprint. SEC distributed a couple of weeks ago $49.9 million. Bringing in Oklahoma and Texas a year early is certainly going to help. 6 days a week, we're here with you Monday through Saturday, 2 hours, sidelines.live. Check us out always. If you missed the show, go to the website and hit that Patreon button, the orange P at the top of the page. We need your support, grow this show as we continue to. We got a lot of listeners, and that's because we have the best guests, best content. Again, follow us on Twitter at sidelines_live. Let's get started right now with Jason Caldwell. And Jason, man, you're a busy man. Auburn Tigers, you got a lot to cover. You got basketball wrapping up now, about to finish the regular season tomorrow. Spring practice is kicked off. Baseball's underway. Gymnastics, softball. So I'll let you get started wherever you're ready.
Yeah, no, you're right. It is a busy time when you look at it. And obviously the biggest thing going on right now is basketball team, I think needs a win on Saturday to solidify an NCAA tournament berth. And then they could still get in. But if you don't win on Saturday, then it's going to be by the skin of your teeth if you do. And so I think it's obviously you start talking about must-win games. It doesn't get more must-win than to put you above 500 in the league against a top 5 net team. And Auburn only has 2 of those wins. And so, obviously that's a starting point when you look at it for this basketball team that did everything it needed to do for, once again, about 30 minutes against Alabama. They played about as well as they're going to play in basketball. And, they hadn't been able to put together many 40-minute stretches. And it probably the other night, it probably would have taken about 36 minutes. They could have had about a 4-minute lull. They couldn't have a 10-minute lull, and that's what happened to them. But, yeah, they got opportunities, and they got another big one on Saturday.
Well, and that's what a lot of people we were talking yesterday with Gary Harris up in Tuscaloosa, and that game at the end, Auburn had the shot at the end of regulation, had a chance there, but it's a 40-minute game. There's always in basketball, especially on the road, you're going to have calls you got to deal with. But am I fair to say this, that I agree with Bruce Pearl? They've beaten who they're supposed to beat. I'm talking about Auburn, and they got a few wins over teams they weren't supposed to beat. But the games that they weren't supposed to win against the better teams on paper, they've all, other than the Kentucky game, they have fought down to the wire. So
Yeah.
that tells me if a couple of players come in, Auburn could be holding up that trophy next year in early March.
Yeah, I mean, they've been pretty close. They have. Like I said, the Kentucky game is kind of the outlier there for them. And then early in the season, a game at Georgia where they didn't play very good. For the most part, it's been, they kind of been that same situation that, kind of like Tennessee's been, where Tennessee's won a few more than Auburn has, but, kind of look up and it was kind of that just dogfight kind of basketball games. That's the ones they played. And you got to find a way to have more scoring and scoring. They shot the ball actually pretty well the other night until a stretch where their shot selection once again became the issue. Yeah. And that was the thing down the stretch for them. But I think they let the officiating kind of dictate the mood down the stretch a little bit. Alabama's crowd got into it. And let's face it, when you're playing with foul trouble with two of your three best players for much of a second half, it makes an impact, and it did. And unfortunately for Auburn, that's been the situation for probably 4 of the last 6 games. You look up and Browne and Jalen Williams especially have been in foul trouble a good bit recently. I went and looked, and somebody asked me in my mailbag this week about fouls and kind of how those things went. And so I went back and did a little research and found out that I think let's see if I can get my numbers correctly. It said Auburn averaging a foul on 27.3% of their possessions. Iowa State's the only Power 5 team in the country with a worse percentage than Auburn. And obviously Auburn's the last in the SEC, and Georgia's the best in the league. But Georgia's only 64th nationally. And Georgia, Mississippi State, Kentucky, and Ole Miss are the only teams in the top 150 nationally in fewest fouls per possession. So that means the officials in this league call a bunch of fouls.
Yeah.
And Auburn gets called more than anybody. And is some of that is, hey, they might reach a little bit more than anybody, because I do think there's some fouls that add up for this team, especially from Browne and Dylan Caldwell. When you're 30 feet from the basket, a reach-in foul, those no-need fouls, you can't have those when you're a player that's prone to get in foul trouble. And that's we saw that again the other night. There were a couple of those that, hey, they're questionable, but there's no need for you to be reaching in at that point. But now you got to play the hand that's been dealt, and that means a big game against Tennessee, likely without Dylan Caldwell. Where can you get some minutes from? Behind Janai Browne, do we see Johan Traore more again? We saw him in Knoxville against Tennessee. Yeah. Got to find a way to get some size on the court against a really big Tennessee team that's, without Zakai Ziegler, their smallest, quickest player, they're going to be even bigger now. That team you'll see on Saturday.
Well, you mentioned about those reach-in fouls with like Dylan Caldwell and Janai Browne playing 20 or 30 feet from the basket, running in to get it. And that is always the risk, but that percentage, Auburn had more fouls called. Also, having smaller guards might be an issue as well with the fouls.
Yeah, I think it could be, because you're probably having to try to take a few more chances because guys will back you down if you don't. And so I think it might have something to do with that. But I think you just look at it and I think probably, unfortunately, sometimes it works in your favor. Alabama, Georgia defensive backs, they're going to play more aggressive. They're going to be more physical. Sooner or later, officials just stop calling it.
Yeah.
Well, in basketball, it seems like it works the other way. If you get known as a team that reaches in and you're really aggressive on defense, whatever reason, they're just going to call more fouls. And that's what we've seen, because Alabama hasn't been known as an aggressive defensive team. They're pretty aggressive this year. They're not getting called as many fouls. And so Tennessee's pretty darn aggressive. And every once in a while you'll see a game like that Auburn-Tennessee game. There was a good bit called, but there's just no rhyme or reason sometimes. And that's probably the most frustrating part of things for coaches, is when you play the same game, you play the same style of game. One night there's 29 fouls called. The next night there's 14 fouls called. That's a major difference and impacts how the game's played.
Well, when you think about it, as a team, where does Auburn rank free throw shooting percentage?
Take me about 2 seconds. I can figure that out.
Yeah,
So,
because Wendell Green is really good. He's there at the foul line. He does well, but yeah, there's been some disparaging. I mean, the Texas A&M game, 39 fouls at College Station. A&M's a good team. Give them credit. They finished second in the conference. But when you're a smaller team, doesn't that mean you're going to have to play more aggressively and having to fight a lot? But when I say that, who in the league has really big guards and can go deep? I mean, Kentucky does, but are there many teams that have a bunch of 6'4" guards that can all shoot?
No, I mean, Tennessee's probably the closest thing. I mean, when you look at Vescovi, especially now with getting Josiah Jordan James back and getting some size, they have a little bit more size with Vescovi and some of those guys. Yeah, I mean, there's not a ton of those teams when you look at it. Even across the country, a team like Kansas is probably bigger at guard than most, but their center's 6'7". And so there's a trade-off in how you play that. And it's why matchups are so important. Janai Broome matchup, if he has a little bit of size advantage, he has monster games.
Yeah.
Because it gives Auburn an advantage at a position that they don't have many advantages at positions right now for this roster in terms of size, and they can take advantage of some of those things. We've seen Jalen Williams do some of that too, especially if he's being guarded by a bigger guy that maybe isn't as agile. That's where Jalen Williams can excel. So there's some flip side things you can take advantage of. But you're right, from a guard spot, you look and how can you match up with Tennessee? I wouldn't be surprised to see Auburn go back to some zone again against this team, and because of the size and because of some of the things they do, and maybe to try to protect Janai Broome as well.
Is Tennessee a team that's similar to Auburn in a lot of ways? I mean, they won some really good games. Now they beat Alabama, but they got swept by Kentucky at a time when people thought Kentucky really wasn't that good. But they have talent, and but they're not consistent. They went 2-5 in a stretch here lately before they started getting them back on some positive momentum. And or is Auburn comparable to, say, Arkansas with 4 new guys now that Nick Smith Jr. is out there on the court, and it's just maybe too little, too late for Arkansas with Nick Smith coming in to get them into the NCAA tournament. They've got to win. I mean, I'm just trying to find a team Auburn's a lot like. That's how I see it.
Yeah, I think probably more Tennessee, because you looked for a long time and you went, where do points come from in clutch situations? That's the thing I look at for those two teams. You look at Alabama, where their points come from, and they got 2 or 3 guys that in clutch situations they can get the ball to and go, okay, go get me some points.
Yeah,
that's the situation, and that's kind of the game for Auburn. And you look up at the end of games right now. Wendell Green is the obvious choice because he's probably the guy that can make the most, create his own shot better than anybody on this team, and that's what you have to have at the end of basketball games. Yeah. But having a guy that's 5'10", 5'11" trying to do that is a really difficult proposition, and we've seen him, have some of those opportunities the last 2 years, and it's come up empty on a good bit of them because it's hard. It's hard to do those things. There's a reason why Kobe Bryant, Michael Jordan, LeBron James, I mean, they had their fair share of misses, but they also probably made more than anybody. But they're also all 6'5", 6'6", 6'8",
yep.
And have those ability to create your own shot. That's the hard part. That's what Tennessee had. They hadn't had that guy. Maybe they'll get some of those guys back if they get healthy. But that's what Auburn doesn't have, is that guy that you go, okay, we need a basket right now. Go get me one, or go get to the free throw line. And when you don't get bailed out because of your size, which Auburn, Wendell Green gets a lot of fouls called, but late game situations, they're just not going to call those types of fouls in the lane. He got knocked down. He got hit pretty good at the end of in the regulation the other night, and didn't get a call. And so that's just what you have to deal with.
Well, you're not going to get going on the road in the SEC any kind of breaks, and that's not something that's just happened this season. And compound that with social media, there's stuff out there analyzing every play of every game. And we talking yesterday, everybody always seems to think they can do someone else's job better than they can. Right? I would not want to be an official, but sometimes it's just really obvious that it's god awful. And I don't know, that in football, the games have gotten longer and longer and longer because of the reviews. I mean, it's you would think it would be obvious when there's an obvious penalty, but it's not, and it's painful. Jason, just real quick before we go to the break and we come back, I want to switch to spring football and baseball. You're in the next minute. Your chances 50-50, 75-25, Auburn gets in again to the NCAA tournament, or do they have to win at least 2 more games, including tomorrow, at least 1 in the tournament to get in?
Yeah, I think if you beat Tennessee, you're in. I think that to me, I think a 10-8 in this league, 20 wins. I think, I keep coming back to it. Somebody's got to get in. They got to have 68 teams, and there's a lot of teams that are all doing the same thing Auburn's doing because it's hard. It's hard when you get down late in the season. You look and who has dramatically helped themselves. Yeah. I think, a team like Boise State, their win the other night over San Diego State was a huge one for them. That's where you have to start looking. Look at some of these leagues, where you have a team like Florida Atlantic who looks like they're probably in. If you're Auburn and North Carolina and Arkansas and Mississippi State, you don't need those teams to start having upsets in conference tournaments. And so I think you look at does the Mountain West get San Diego State and Utah State and Boise State and Nevada all in? If you start looking at
hold those thoughts, because that's a great story. Let's take a quick break. I want to come back right back with Jason Caldwell inside the Auburn Tigers.
From Dunn, just coming to let you know about our new collection of boots. It's going to be our dress boots. They're the Horsepower collection, and they're genuine exotic leathers and really comfortable. Comes in all different sizes and patterns, so come check them out.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
Jason, you were making a lot of sense talking about Auburn, Tennessee, Mississippi State, Arkansas. They don't need a team like San Diego State, Utah State out in the Mountain West rising up. But Utah State's got 21-7 maybe. They're playing some pretty good ball lately.
Yeah, no, it's those teams. That's the thing. You look in that league and you start, you wonder how much do net rankings factor in. We know they're going to factor in a good bit, but you start looking at some of the teams in there, and you look at Florida Atlantic is up to 15 in the net rankings, 25-3 overall. If they don't win their conference tournament, can you pass up a team that's in the top 20 in the net rankings? I don't think that would happen. But you start looking at, Utah State's up to 22 in the net rankings, 22-7. San Diego State's 18 up there. Boise State's 27, and Nevada's 32. That's four Mountain West teams in the top 32 of the net rankings. And so you start going, what does it look like? Well, start finding ACC teams. Duke's 23, Virginia's 30, Miami's 35, NC State's 41, North Carolina's 44.
Yeah.
I mean, like ACC Pitt's a team is 21-9, and the ACC has a 55 net ranking.
Wow.
Where do those things factor in? It's still human. It's still humans making decisions, and so it could be a year they say we're going to load up on mid majors and start doing some of those things because these conferences maybe aren't as strong at the bottom. You just don't know how those things are going to act, and that's why if you're Auburn and went over Tennessee and conference tournaments, we haven't seen them have as much impact in recent years as they used to. It doesn't seem like. So I think for Auburn, your best bet is to win Saturday, and especially because of who it's against.
Yeah, and it's almost, you're right. The conference tournaments, it's hurt. It used to be you go in there and you win 2 or 3 games. It carried a lot of weight, but then I don't know, maybe it's because back in 2008 when that tornado hit the Georgia Dome and Georgia ended up winning the conference tournament, they had to play at Little John or Coliseum or Alexander Coliseum there at Georgia Tech, and they got in to the automatic bid. Not to mention all the angry Kentucky fans, but I think that's a great point. Conference tournament, you better do it tomorrow, Auburn, and same thing with Tennessee and Mississippi State. They're Arkansas. You lost 2 close games, at Tennessee and at Alabama last weekend for Arkansas, but you still only got 8 conference wins, and this is going to be a big weekend. Jason, let's switch to football. Got some questions coming in. Dr. May, Dr. Waller May up in Tuscaloosa, May Veterinary Clinic, wants to know, Jason, nobody has done a better job, I'm reading this, of chronicling the progress or lack of on the offensive line at Auburn over the last 5 years than you. Talk about these new 8 offensive linemen coming in and why things changed so suddenly.
Yeah, the first thing, the reason why they changed so suddenly is because they didn't have any choice. You're a new staff.
I agree with that.
Yeah, you're a new staff, and they came in, and you said, "Look, we've got to have offensive linemen." They weren't going to have a spring practice if they had not done what they did. I mean, you can't have a spring practice with 7 scholarship offensive linemen. You can't do that. I mean, you would not have been able to do anything, and so they had to have guys, and they had to have them in now, and so that's why they've got. You signed 8 guys, you got 7 on campus. I guess they had 8 scholarship offensive linemen, but still, you couldn't have had spring without it. And so, you bring in Dylan Wade, offensive tackle from Tulsa. You bring in Gunnar Britton, offensive tackle from Western Kentucky. Bring in Avery Jones, interior offensive lineman, going to get his first look at center from East Carolina. So you bring in those guys, and you bring in Braden Joyner, interior offensive lineman from Auburn High School. You bring in Connor Liu, interior offensive lineman from Georgia. You bring in Isaiah Miller, junior college offensive tackle. You bring in, you had to have those guys. And so I think when you start looking at, the need areas, they needed them and had to have them to be able to have a spring. And so we've gotten, a little look at them already. And some of the guys that are returning, and it's a physical looking group.
Wow.
But you had to have some experience was the main thing, because Auburn did not. Colby Smith had not really had any significant snaps at all at offensive tackle. Garner Langmo was playing guard. That was it. That was the extent of your offensive tackle group that was on campus. 2 guys. One of those had not played offensive tackle. Those guys. Here's the thing that people forget about, because you had all these older guys on the roster the last couple of years. It meant that they actually were in decent shape. Now, I think the offensive system, scheme, play calling, all those things hampered them. We saw at the end of the year, they actually had some things they could do on the offensive line to make things work. Mm-hmm. But you had Killian Zaire, you had Austin Troxell, you had Brendan Coffey, and then you also had Alec Jackson. So you had a 2-deep offensive tackle group. So a guy like Colby Smith wasn't getting second team reps on the offensive line because they were like, well, we've got experienced guys that are going to be playing. So now this is the first time these guys have had an opportunity to get significant reps and have a shot at winning a position, because that hadn't been the case. So for those young guys, it's a fresh opportunity. For these older guys that have experience, it's a chance to come in lead a group right away. But I mean, guys like Tate Johnson have stepped up in a leadership role and done some things. And so got him and Kim Stutz and, Jaleel Irvin. There's some older guys that are here too. So it's a really good mixture in the spring for them on the offensive line.
Yeah, that is, I love that answer because, boy, I don't think anybody realized how dire the situation was. Here's one on the defensive side from Gil Whitlock in Memphis. Says, Ekuliota, Derek Hall are gone. Dylan Brooks was a highly regarded player out of a 2A school in East Alabama. Talk about his progress, if he's making the kind of progress that you expected him to, and how will Auburn be on the rush end? Because without edge rushers in the SEC in college football today, you're a dead man walking. Gil Whitlock's question.
Yeah, Gil, appreciate it. Yeah, Hanley is actually a 4A school, but it's still a smaller school, and so he was a guy that played in state championship games, and so they played at a pretty good level. But obviously, it's a much different world when you get into the Southeastern Conference. And so, again, last year, a guy that had some injury situations that hampered him a little bit. He's had a full off season. This is a big spring for Dylan Brooks because you're right. There's never going to be a better opportunity for him than right now. You brought in Elijah McAllister from Vandy. He's a big, long body guy. And then you look at Keldrick Falk, Brent Williams, 2 true freshmen that are already on campus as well. And we talked about how important it was to have those offensive linemen on campus. Well, having those 2 guys on campus is massive because they're getting some reps to learn the defense. And you're going to have, one of those guys, maybe both of them. I mean, Keldrick Falk could be a guy that by the time this season gets here, he could be a guy that could be starting as a true freshman. I mean, you never know. And so, Dylan Brooks, the thing for him is just he wasn't able to get the strength he needed because of the injury last year. Mm-hmm. Now he's back and be able to get in the weight room. And so this is kind of that next step for him. And so I think when you look at Dylan Brooks, athleticism's there, but we heard from the coaching staff and we saw it in a similar scheme last year at TCU.
Yeah.
They looked and said, okay, if we don't have that classic guy, we'll use one of our linebackers, and that's how we'll create pressure. And so I think a guy like Cam Riley is a guy that can do some of those things. Demario Tolan's a guy that can do some of those things. I think you got some options to how you want to create pressure. But obviously, if you could find some guys that can step up and just flat out rush the passer, that'd be big. And they're going to have those opportunities this spring.
Hey, one more question. I know you got to go. Tate Davis, Charlotte, North Carolina, says Auburn linebackers, Wesley Steiner, Desmond Tisdale, Cam Riley, rate this group, talk about depth and any possible newcomers that would have an immediate impact from day one.
Yeah, the newcomers, there's 2 newcomers. Austin Keys from Ole Miss is a big, physical-looking middle linebacker, almost 240 pounds. And so I think he's a guy, and I mentioned Demario Tolan. Demario may have to get a little bit bigger and stronger, but those are your 2 newcomers. And so that's the guys that you look at. But, I had 2 guys that redshirted last year too, Robert Woodyard from Mobile, Powell Gordon from Auburn High School. I think if those are 2 guys. Powell Gordon's a guy that was a really good pass rusher in high school, and see if he can maybe one of those guys they figure out can get after the quarterback a little bit and see some roles. So they've got some added depth. They got more options than they had at linebacker because you also have Eugene Asante that transferred in from North Carolina this most of last year. He's there as well. But I think you look at those 3 guys that have experience returning. Cam Riley's the most experienced guy that led them in tackles, for the returners. And then Wesley Steiner, and Desmond Tisdale. All 3 guys that can run, they're athletic. And that's the thing now. We talked to Josh Aldridge and Ron Roberts. They said, look, we're going to put our best 11 on the field. And that could be 2 true inside linebackers. It could be 2 true outside linebackers. But we're going to put our best 11 guys on the field. So I think it's a group that should be better this season. But I also think, a lot of that could be because you got more depth on the defensive line. Now, you have a guy like Colby Wooden that can be a difference maker from a down position. We'll find that out. But I think there's more bodies and there's more size up front, and that should help those linebackers.
Yeah. That's a lot of progress compared to where things were a year ago. And you're not one to just throw compliments or positive out. You're a truth broker. That's why we love having you on here. Jason Caldwell, let people know how they can follow you, keep up with all your great work. And as always, we really appreciate you taking the time to share with us on Sidelines.
You can check us out at auburnundercover.com, autigers.com will also get you there. And I can also follow me on Twitter at ITATJason.
Jason, thanks so much.
Thanks,
Have
Rob.
a great week. I'll tell you what, Coach John Brady will be joining us here in just a second. But getting back to that, you're talking about immediate help from true freshmen. Freshmen today, a lot different than they were 15, 20, 30 years ago. Some of these kids they've a lot of them, most of them go to camps throughout the year, especially in the summer, and they're already playing, but a lot of it's 7-on-7, but they know the other top players at their positions and the other top players, period, around the country. Let's switch. Coach John Brady. Coach, you are a busy man. And I'll tell you one thing. I was watching that LSU game the other night as I was watching the Auburn game and thinking, wow, what was the theme of Wednesday night? Don't get a big lead in the SEC at home or on the road. Be careful with that too early. But let's talk about where LSU is now, because you are the coach. I mean, it's like we're talking to the doctor is in the house, Coach John Brady, and we're actually in Jonesboro up here at Arkansas State at the Embassy Suites at the Convention Center, right on campus. We were up here for the Arkansas Waterfowl Hall of Fame, and George Dunklin and all these great people up here. We inducted a friend of ours, a 97-year-old lady, Gail Camp from Memphis, Coach, and she got up there and blew the duck call and got 3 standing ovations at 97, still hunting over in the OK Duck Club, Osceola, Kaiser, Wiener, Waldenburg, and Harrisburg. You know all those big towns from your time in the borough.
Yeah, I know a few of them, but, LSU, what we did the other night was uncharacteristic, particularly the first half. The first half against Missouri, we were 11 for 15 from the 3-point line. We started a walk-on that was a senior, and the first 2 shots of the game, he hit 2 threes from like 21 feet, and it was incredible what we did. The problem with that is at halftime when we had a lead and we'd hit 11 or 15 threes, I didn't think it was sustainable offense for LSU the last 20 minutes because it was something we hadn't done all year long based on the statistics. So, yeah. But in the second half, I've got it right here. The second half, LSU became who it has been. 38% from the floor the second half. Yeah. 3 of 13 from the 3, and it enabled Missouri.
Well, it enabled Missouri. Missouri's a good team. And like you say, Coach, we'll get you back in a second. You were having a problem. Yeah. Coach, you lost it.
My phone was ringing, man.
Okay. We're losing you there for just a second. But
Missouri is a team, that's explosive now. They can score in bunches. And I think in a tournament situation, they're a dangerous team to play in the SEC tournament coming up. They can really, they don't have 1 or 2 guys. They got 4 or 5 guys that can all shoot it. And teams like that become really dangerous in a tournament situation.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and right now in the league, LSU, and you mentioned this earlier, you don't want to see them have to flip the roster like they did last year, but coaches are, and you're a coach, you always will be a coach. It's like someone was a general in the Army when they're 97 years old, they're still the general. So Coach, at this time of the year,
whether he was a good one or not.
Yeah, it better be a good one, or I'm not talking to him. But Ray Osment was here last night at the dinner, and we hung out with him. Jonesboro is a cool town, and it's growing. But I got to say this: how much pressure is every coach in the SEC feeling right now, especially the ones like Mississippi State and Auburn and Arkansas, and I think Tennessee's in, but those other 3 about getting into the tournament, because people forget quickly what you did 3 or 4 years ago, don't they?
Yeah, they do. And Auburn, and in my opinion, I think Auburn and Arkansas both have something to prove to be worthy of getting in the NCAA tournament. I've never seen, teams that are, they saying 8 teams in the league from the SEC. I never saw that, but You never know. And Auburn's got a big game coming up. Arkansas's got something to prove. And here's the thing about Arkansas to me. They're the most inconsistent team, I believe, in the conference in terms of both ends of the floor. And I always wonder, everybody says Arkansas has 2 lottery picks or first round picks.
Yeah.
And they can't score 60 points. I mean, I've had a couple of lottery picks in my time at LSU, and those cats would get 20 and 12 every night. Yeah. They didn't get 6 and 7 and get 20. Yeah. And, you know, they were, the graph on them was pretty high and pretty consistent. And some of these guys that they say are lottery picks or first round picks, they're so up and down and all over the board. It makes for inconsistency in play. And I think that's one of the things fans, they read how high rated these players are, but they don't see it on the floor. So where do they go? They go to the coach like he's not doing a good job. But
Coach, hold that thought.
Be overrated.
Yeah, hold that thought. That is a great series of points that you're making. I want to get more into that right after the break because everybody loves to say someone's a lottery pick. Got to prove it. We'll be right back, Coach John.
Yes.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
Coach, you were rolling before we went to the break, but I love your talking about lottery picks because people nowadays, if a kid comes out right out of high school and the first game or two, doesn't matter who they're playing, football, baseball, basketball. Oh yeah, he'll be gone. He'll be one and done. As a coach that sometimes on the first test or the first game, you can look great, and then people start getting a scouting report on you and they start figuring out how to play you. You got to constantly evolve. And what you did in high school was great. You get in college, you got to do that plus something every night out, don't you?
Well, who's evaluating these guys that makes them 5-star players? I don't know that. The guys that are doing the evaluation, where is their frame of reference from? What have they done to put themselves in that position to be able to rank players like that? I'd rather hear it from a former coach or a guy who's dealt with players who've played the game before, not someone who may not have that type of experience to have the status to evaluate players and put stars on them or whatever the case may be. And sometimes, different players develop in different ways and in different levels, different times. And just because a guy can run and jump and do a few things that are spectacular doesn't mean he's an excellent, outstanding basketball player. And I think sometimes it's unfair to that young man coming into that school because the expectation level has grown so, and he hadn't even bounced the ball yet. So I always take a wait and see attitude, unless it's just, I had a couple of guys. Stromile Swift was the second pick in the NBA draft. He got 22 and 12 every night in 4 or 5 blocks. He never had 6 and 7 and did those type of things. He was legitimate. Brandon Bass was legitimate. Glenn Davis, you could tell he was a special player. So Tyrus Thomas, those kind of cats. But some of these guys that I watch offensively, they're athletic, but their skill level and being able to shoot and understand and play the game at that level is not quite there yet. So I think sometimes it's unfair to the player, which in turn puts pressure on the coach, because if the player doesn't perform as labeled, then they don't blame the player. They turn and look at the coach.
Yeah. I read that one time, an interview about Bo Schembechler's thoughts on recruiting. He never liked to talk about recruiting. Remember the old days, coaches they didn't publicize it. And you didn't have guys putting hats on. You just came there. You were lucky you got a scholarship and you were going to do it his way or the highway. And you're exactly right. The people that are putting these 4 or 5-star rankings on them, what's their frame of reference? It's no different than you're watching CNBC or Fox Business. You got some guy on there talking about a company. Now they make them put full disclosure. He owns, 100,000 shares. He's on the board of directors. Sure, he's going to say things, but I like the guy that's like, I don't care. I'm going to say what the truth is. And that's what I would love to see your evaluations on the kids coming out of high school, because as my kids get older, they're 22 to 34. I see a kid now in high school and I'm thinking, God, that's just so young. And as a coach, but when they get there, suddenly they're not the only kid that's the biggest, the fastest, the strongest kid. They're one of 13 scholarship guys on that LSU basketball roster. And there's 30,000 students they got to deal with. It's a lot different from that point on. What makes or breaks top athletes when they come to a program like LSU when you were coaching, and how did you help them navigate through it, you and your staff?
Well, I think the first thing is the player and the coach have to develop a trust of one another. I've always thought in any relationship that has any meaning to it, two things it's based on is respect and trust. And it's a two-way street. And particularly in the coaching situation, that players and his people around him have to trust the coach that he's telling him what he needs to hear. And then they have to respect one another on occasion when they do disagree. And so it's, the coach has to respect and trust the player, and the player has to do the same with the coach. And when you have that type of relationship, I think improvement and development can take place at a rapid pace. But a lot of times there are too many people interfering with the young player because they have an idea of where he should be. The worst thing is unmet expectations. And then when that is unmet, instead of pointing their finger maybe at the player didn't accept coaching as well as he should have, they blame the coach. And your trust and respect is broken down a little bit. Therefore, development doesn't take place. And then nowadays, the player says, I'll transfer. So it makes it more difficult and challenging to coach, I think, in this era than it did 15 years ago when I was, involved in it at a high level.
I like what you said a few weeks ago on the show about Glenn Davis. You said it was really important that Glenn stayed home in Baton Rouge. And I'm starting to think there are two cities that per square inch of real estate produce more big-time Division I athletes, football and basketball especially. And that's Mobile and Baton Rouge. Because Glenn Davis, you said it was so important. He's got a big family there, and he probably liked the food there in Baton Rouge as well.
Well, his best friends were on the team. That particular year, we had our top 6 players. 4 of them were from Baton Rouge. One of them was from Denham Springs, which is 10 miles down the road, Tasman Mitchell. And the other was Daryl Mitchell, who was 50 miles down the road in St. Martinville. So, we had a collection of players that grew up around each other. They played AAU with each other or against one another. They knew each other from high school. And the bond that team created was really off the charts. And Glenn could have gone anywhere in the country, but I think it was advantageous to him because of his circumstances with family and those type of things. He played with his good friends that he trusted, and he was able to really have a special career at LSU. He's first team All SEC, his SEC Player of the Year, and took us to a Final Four. So, he made the right choice. Sometimes it may be better for players to leave. I think it's individually, whatever the circumstances surrounding that young man are.
Yeah. Towns like Napoleonville, Auburn had a great player 20 years ago, Brandon Jacobs, big running back, big guy, about 6'4", 270, something in the water down there. You can run like that, be that big. And Shannon Robeek from Denham Springs. But they're just so many players. And Quentin Smith and Tanner Smith got a question for you. They're both from DeRidder, Lake Charles. probably heard the Stein Home and Garden Stores and big LSU fans up in Memphis. That question is, based on what you've seen out of Matt McMahon in the first year, is he a guy that you think once he starts to get that branding, that message out there, gets these kids on campus and get LSU back to where Coach Brady took the Tigers in 06? Compliment to you.
I think the biggest thing is before I get into all what can he coach or not coach or all that, which I think he can, and I think he will. You've got to have some players, and he's got to be able to recruit it, and that's how I judge a guy at that level. I know most everybody can coach it pretty good, but can you recruit it and manage it? In today's game, you've got to be able to manage your team and the coming and going of players. And I've always said this with the portal and transferring and all of those things, NIL, your team may change every year. And I think the coach that can put together a team in the shortest period of time and build the trust, camaraderie, respect, whatever goes through those intangibles that make for special teams, the coach that can do that the quickest will be the coach that wins the most games. Because now, let's say our team at LSU turns over and we have 8 or 9 new players next year again. You've got to flip that, and in about 3 or 4 months, you've got to have a team that's ready to go. You don't have an off season much anymore. Most players go in the portal, and they're trying out for NBA teams. So we made most of our progress in the spring and the summer when I had everybody coming back and everybody on campus. There are 8 or 9, 10 guys in the weight room. They're working out together. They build that camaraderie that has to transfer through every player to have a quality team. So, it's more difficult now. So my response to that is, can any new coach in the league at that level recruit it, coach? I know he can coach it, and can he manage it?
Yeah.
And we'll see. Time will tell.
Yeah. The staff that he's assembled. I mean, you look now on the bench in a SEC basketball game, there are almost as many support people as there are players. That either helps or it's a hindrance. Your thought?
Well, I was never one of those guys when I called a timeout, had all my assistants huddle around me and we figure out what we're going to tell them. I knew what I was going to tell them when I called the timeout. I knew what I was going to tell them when the other team called the timeout. And when I had, Donnie Tyndall or Kermit Davis or Butch Pierre or John Treelord sitting beside me at LSU, they would tell me on the bench, I said, look, we're going to call timeout. What, anybody got any point? And they would tell me. And then as soon as my team came over, I didn't stand around there and discuss anything. I got right into the huddle. They needed to hear what the head coach had to say. So, and I didn't have the luxury of 8 guys standing around me at a timeout. And really on any coaching staff, that head coach, there's only 1, maybe 2 guys that he really trusts in terms of game management and things that he's going to listen to. So I don't understand how you stand around for 15 seconds of the timeout with 8 or 9 guys standing around you acting like they're all coaching, because they're not actually. But I don't know how to manage that. I wouldn't know what to do with that. There's a couple of guys on my staff I always trusted, and they told me before what their thoughts were. But when that timeout was called, I huddled those guys up, set them down. I got right into the middle of it and let them know what they needed to hear.
Yeah, and that's something that you'll see. Sometimes they'll take, chairs out there to sit down. But I like the fact, you're right. I knew what I was going to talk to them before they came over there versus, all right, guys, what are we going to do?
Yeah, I probably should have taken some chairs out on the floor at times myself because of what I said and maybe how I said it. The delivery probably wasn't quite what it needed to be. But I think that's why they move them out, to get them away from the fans and get them out on the floor and get people behind the bench so they can't really hear what is being discussed in the huddle, which I think is smart. I probably should have been better at that.
Well, that's something that, in all fairness, there's places you should never have a microphone, and that's ridiculous to have anywhere near what a coach is saying to his players. Or around me yesterday when I sent a Venmo from the wrong account and tried to retrieve it and spent 24 hours. Everything I said, please forgive me, God. I can't imagine those conversations. I know
Sure.
some of the ones I've had from people that have been trying to help me in sports, or God help you if you tried to tutor me with math survey my sophomore year at Christian Brothers. That was tough. But Coach, the other thing too, you watch the grind. You talk about most teams are going to play close to 30 games in the regular season. And these are young kids, 18 to 22 with the virus. We may have some 24, 25-year-olds. But you talk about the grind. You're playing a game, let's say Tuesday night and Saturday. For the players that do play, there's a lot of recovery. The players that are injured, it's rehab. But how grueling is it? And what happens late season mentally? If you're not in great shape, I would think you just could easily fall apart unless you got an incredible training staff. Talk about their role.
Well, there's a couple responses to that you trigger with me. One is these players, most of them at the high major level, they want to go to the NBA and play. NBA plays 3-4 games a week. They play 80 some odd games. So you telling me that these guys are tired playing 2 games a week in college?
Yeah.
But you want to be a pro and play 3-4 games a week in
Yes.
3 different cities, and you're flying all over the place, and got to play the next day. You play in Houston, the next day you play in New Orleans, and then you leave there and have a day break, and then you play somewhere like New York or somewhere. So I don't buy a lot of that. But the second thing is each team is different, and it's the head coach's responsibility to gauge where his team is in terms of how they need to work, how long they need to work, the difficulty of the practice based on where the coach finds himself with his team.
Yeah.
And that's what the head coach is paid $2 and $3 million for this year, to make those determinations. I wouldn't pay that kind of money, but I think it's the coach's responsibility to know his team, how much to push them at this particular time of the year, based on what he senses and feels.
Yeah. Well, I like what you just said. They're talking. I'm just going to say it, whining about playing a couple of games a week in the grind. And I keep hearing that. I'm sorry, but I'm not buying it. I go to a lot of Grizzlies games, 25, 30 a year. Like I told you, when Stromile Swift came to Memphis, and, Johnny Jones was coaching at Memphis. I mean, that was a cool time. He came to the Grizzlies for a while. Any SEC player, I love to go see them play. I'm a league guy. I'm an Auburn grad, but God, you did put out some good ones. But hey, yeah, if you're playing Tuesday and you're off till Saturday, I don't want to. Don't talk about if you're struggling when a freshman year to physically the grind of this thing. I remember Gene Chizik, when he's coaching at Auburn, brought about 10 Army Rangers from 3rd Ranger Battalion, 75th Regiment from Fort Benning, came over for Veterans Day to talk to his team, talked about their daily routine and what they do. I don't think anybody else complained again. Just, I like your coach. Damn, I hate that Coach K's out. I hate that Roy Williams is out. I hate that Jay Wright's out. I hate that you're out. You need hard-ass, tough coaches. Don't ever. I mean, I every time you're on here, I get so many people going, man, I don't want you to leave LSU, but I wish you were on SEC Network doing games.
Well, that's a grind, and I listen to those guys, and what they don't have, in my opinion, in the SEC Network is a former coach who has been involved with it. They're all former players.
Yeah.
The players have a different perspective of what should happen or shouldn't happen, as opposed to a former coach in that league. Yeah. And they don't have that input, in that network. And so, but the women's, they had it from time to time. Yeah. Had the coach at Georgia, and he was on there offering his input. But SEC Network on the men's side, they don't have one of those guys. And it would give a different perspective possibly when they discuss preparation and what a team's going through, and just give it a different opinion, possibly. Yeah.
And we'll come back in just a few more minutes right after the break, but I'll just go into it saying this. When Gene Chizik was on, that was a lot of fun to get his perspective. You've got these players. We had Joe Klein on a couple of weeks ago. He's really, really good. and Damian Fishback. These guys are great. Coach John Brady with us. A few more minutes right after this. Coach, again, and I didn't even think about it, but you're right. I mean, Andy Landers is really good, and I have been watching the SEC hoops history. Dale Browne, Minot, North Dakota, what he went through. I mean, to get a coaching job, what you went through. You told me on this show, you said this because I would never ever say anything that you said to me off the record on the show, but you said your first 2 or 3 years as a coach in high school, you made $15,000 a year, correct?
Right. Crowley, Louisiana. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Can you imagine? I mean, that's why we need, when you get coaches on the sets, it is so important. You talk about the preparation and all like that. But last couple of minutes here, got another question that came in. Jared Montague, his father went to East Reserve in St. John, but he grew up in Houston, lives in Memphis, big LSU guy. Asking this question, and that is, LSU has had some incredible highs with Coach Brady's Final Four, Dale Browne's Final Four, just some incredible runs. Are the people as passionate, does he think, about basketball when they're winning as they are in football? And what is it going to take to make LSU a consistent threat in the SEC men's basketball? Because with Kim Mulkey, I don't think that's debatable.
Well, I don't know if anything will rival the enthusiasm and support from a number standpoint that football creates at LSU. That's one of the top 6 or 8 venues in the country to watch a game, and the tradition there is just incredible. But the basketball tradition is good there too. You know, you got Bob Pettit, who's NBA top 75, Pete Maravich. You have those type of players that played there. When you're winning at LSU in any sport, the passion there is for that particular sport based on the numbers that it can draw. And I think the consistency, Will Wade did an outstanding job in terms of getting people coming, selling out some home games. The students were incredible when Will was there in terms of their support. He was popular. But the other things happened and put the program back because all the players left. So I think LSU can have a consistent winner. I don't think there's any reason it can't. And I think this year is just a rebuilding year and a growing year, and we'll see the improvement they make from this year to next year. It's got to be good and it's got to be positive, and I think it will.
All right. Coach, how do we get you on SEC Network? What about, I mean, you are a natural for it, because when we ask you questions on this show, we get answers, and you don't hold back. And there's way too many people that soft pedal. But the takeaway from this segment is, hey man, you think you're ready to go to the NBA, and you're complaining about a couple of games a week wearing you out?
It does give you a different look at it when you think of it in those terms.
Yeah. Well, I don't want you to leave LSU, but maybe you could split some time. It would be great. But Coach John Brady, as always, we really appreciate having you on here, and if people can follow you, if you're doing camps or whatever like that, put the word out. But we look forward to having you on next week, as basketball is going to be, it gets more fun by the hour.
Yeah, it'll be fun. I'd love to do it. Just set it up with me. Appreciate it.
I will do. Thank you, sir.
All right,
appreciate it. You bet. That is Coach John Brady. Not many times you can get to have a conversation every week during basketball with a man who took a team to the Final Four, as he did LSU. Now we're going to go to the Oracle of the Metroplex, Bo Carter, man who grew up wonderful, beautiful beginnings in the Quad Cities of Northwest Alabama, Sheffield, Tuscumbia, Florence, and Muscle Shoals, home of the Swampers. He knows the Swampers. Bo Carter, Vanderbilt grad, Went out there, Mississippi State SID from 74 to 86, then to the Southwest Conference office. Trust me, you know what happens when everybody starts turning in one another and cannibalizing one another? Your conference is no longer there. And then to the Big 12. Now on the board of the National Football Foundation Writers Association, Baseball Writers Association of America, and one of the genuinely greatest people that you'll hear sports from, a truth broker like Coach Brady. So with that introduction, he'll be playing at the Sands Hotel Thursday through Sunday in Las Vegas. You remember the Johnny Carson show when David Brenner would come on, whoever it was, go, I just want to say one thing before I sit down. I'll be at the Sands Thursday night through Sunday. Come by, we'll have a knish. We'll get Meshuggah. We'll have a great time. Come on. Like this round table concept, it's a lot of fun. And we've talked about it a lot with you, conference expansion, TV rights and everything. You're right there. There's the holy trinity of the centers of influence for college football. The holy trinity is as follows: the Metroplex, Dallas, Fort Worth, Birmingham, and Atlanta. Mm-hmm. I don't think that's even up for debate. Okay. Mm-hmm. And bottom line, we're blessed to have a lot of listeners in what I call that trinity, the holy trinity, and the NBA, Memphis as well, where we're out of. Mm. Tell me this, Pac-12, there's a lot of, rearranging of the chairs, but, right now, maybe San Diego State goes to the Pac-12, but trying to get somebody to join the Pac-12 right now is like trying to get somebody to join you for happy hour on the Titanic.
That's right. Rob, exactly right. They've even reached out to SMU, the Big 12 and Pac-12 to talk to Gonzaga, which is Matt Dean will say more about this later on. Matt, good to see you, man.
Good to see you both.
It's if they don't get their multimedia rights deal done pretty quickly, they're going to be dead in the water. And again, I mean, that's just speculation, but they've got to really ratchet up. And George Klivikoff, the new commissioner, has done a great job of going out and really after no offense to Larry Scott, but he just about ran it into the ground out there.
The Undertaker, Larry Scott, yes.
Yeah, but former commissioner. Yeah. But Klivikoff is really trying to keep the thing together after losing the two bell cows, UCLA and USC. So, and then there could just be a big grab. The Big 12 has made it known that they'd like to pick up a few teams. Heck, the Big 10 might want to go to 18 or 20. You never know. The SEC might even get Oregon State to get some of the Nike stuff out there.
See, that's where
it's
I'm
wild.
going.
It's wild.
Yeah. Because Matt's son, Tyler's on that staff with Dan Lanning at Oregon. He'd been at A&M for 4 years before that with Jimbo Fisher. That's the point. This is how I see it. Those of you that have not been to Seattle, to the Dub, University of Washington, the W, not the Mississippi Women's College in Columbus, but you know what I mean. But University of Washington is an incredible school, and they've got really fine tradition in football. Oregon, and I mean, it didn't just start with Chip Kelly. Look what Mike Bellotti did in the 14 years. Rich Brooks, 18 years. Basically in a state that produces, I don't know, half a dozen, 8 D1 players a year. Okay. I bet you less than 15, 20% of their roster is in-state kids. But I say this about the Pac-12, and I'm going to throw this question to you, Matt. And that is, with all this, everybody is looking at the Pac-12, and everybody in the Pac-12 is looking outside of their own league. George Klivikoff has come in there. He's trying to do what he can. But Oregon, to me, is self-sustaining. They have a lot of money. And it's almost like, I'm not saying they're Notre Dame, but with the Nike reach, they're getting kids coming from all over the country. They're going to be a consistent top 10 program, whatever league they're in, because they have a brand. And I'm just saying, Phil Knight has the kind of money and influence to get them in either the Big 10. I don't know. Maybe they go to the Big 12. I don't know. But Matt, what if you were the commissioner of the Pac-12, which, watch out, it's going to be a 6-pack. But what would be your first order, thing that you would want to do to try to save the league?
I'm looking at media markets, and good morning, guys. Good to see you again, Bo. I'm trying to get into Dallas media market, so I'm trying to connect with the Big 12. And it's a direct flight from Eugene, Oregon to Dallas, Texas, and there's also probably one from Seattle, Washington to Dallas, Texas, I'm assuming. So I think that's the logical play at this point in time. I know initially when USC and UCLA jumped, everyone was thinking, well, Oregon and Washington, a few others may break off to the Big 12, the Big 10. I don't think that's going to happen anymore. And maybe nor should it, because honestly, I think with the Phil Knight factor and the Nike factor, if I'm Oregon, I'm going to say selfishly, okay, we just had a staff. Think about this, Bo. Think about this, Rob. That staff last year, I think, signed 6 4-stars from the state of Texas, 2 or 3 from Georgia and Alabama, and 2 or 3 from Florida. They want to come this way, and they've got some guys on the East Coast on their roster from the Maryland and D.C. area. So that brand, it's not a 3-hour drive like you're looking regionally. It's a 3 or 4 hour flight. We'll do it. And they ended up in the top 10. They hit the ground running when Dan got there in January. They were top 10 in the recruiting class. And I think this year they'll be top 5. But if you look at the demographics of that class, guys, what I just described, I'd say 12 to 15, including some portal transfers, are all from the southeast part of the country, including the great state of Texas.
Yeah, and you go back, Bo and Matt, and look when Oregon started playing more of these upper-level elite SEC teams, and that's really the only time they're going to play them. LSU, they played Auburn in that national championship game in 2010. They played them again in 2019. What I noticed, just from my view, was just the difference in the line of scrimmage, especially the front sevens on defense of the SEC teams versus Oregon. They couldn't hold up to the physical beating, and then 2 and 3 deep just coming at you nonstop. That has changed significantly. Dan Lanning, as Matt has pointed out, Matt knows a lot more than me, but I'm with you. This is not, you're going to Oregon. Oh, we're down in South Florida. We're going to have to take the break down to Eugene. That's 2 weeks to get there. We'll miss the game. Yeah, you're right. You get on a 3 or 4 hour nonstop flight, probably in first class, and you land there in Eugene, and it's probably raining, but hey, it's raining in Jonesboro right now. But you get there, man. This is Oregon's like its own deal within the Pac-12, so I think they're going to be fine either way, Matt and Bo. And now, Bo, is the Big 12 going to make a move on Utah? What about Arizona and Arizona State? You could have Utah and BYU in the same conference. That would be fun. The Holy War, isn't that what they call it?
That's right. No love lost between those schools too, Rob. But the Big 12 Commissioner, Brett Yormark, said we're open for business. So he's talked to Gonzaga when they came down and played Texas in basketball about 2 months ago. And speaking of Matt's point too, Fred Jacoby, the late commissioner of the Big 12 and the Southwest Conference, and Mac said once jet airplanes took precedent as far as mode of transportation, really the nation became the recruiting. But like you said, you can fly from Miami to Eugene in 6 hours, 5 or 6 hours, Dallas to St. Louis in an hour or whatever, man. It's and Matt hit the nail on the head, man, with the facilities that Phil Knight's provided for Oregon, man. They're a prime spot for anybody that, anybody anywhere.
Yeah. Matt, when you get out there to Eugene, you don't have to fly into Portland, do you?
No, I do not. Now,
Lucky
I always have to go through Dallas because I live in Memphis, and I have to deal with some delays, and I've missed a connection going through DFW. Yeah. But I'll tell you this, guys, and the one thing, Bo, and I just want to tell you, I had not been to Eugene, Oregon ever until my son joined the staff. Beautiful. And I get out there, and it's like its own entity. And really quaint, small town. It kind of reminded me of Iowa City, Iowa, where I grew up next to, good college town. And, everybody's talking about football, maybe even basketball there, and then the history of women's basketball there. but go visit their track and field
Oh
complex.
God, yeah.
It is, guys. And I've been to about every SEC venue with my travels when the son worked in the SEC.
Yeah.
And Austin is only about 60. The stadium, Austin Stadium, about 60,000.
Mhm.
But that also reminded me of Kinnick Stadium, University of Iowa. It was just a loud. I was there for the UCLA game this year, and they beat them pretty handily, especially in the second half. And it's a tough place for the visitors to play.
Yeah,
it really is. And Washington had a terrific year, and something, guys, that's kind of unique. And I know Caleb Williams is on USC, and they're going to the Big Ten. But this year in the Pac-12, you got three of the best quarterbacks in the country with Caleb Williams, Michael Penix at Washington, and obviously I'm biased with Bo Nix at Oregon. The Pac-12 is playing some good football right now.
They are.
The quarterback position.
Yeah. See, that's the question, Matt. They had 5 teams last year win 10 or more games.
And Oregon State's tough. They really are.
And Oregon State beat Florida badly, 30-3 or something. But 5 teams in that league won 10 games or more. And I'm kidding around, but going, what are they going to do? They've got to make a stand. And right now, you've got Oregon and Washington vacillating with, maybe going to the Big Ten or possibly to the Big 12. You got Arizona State and Arizona, the rattlesnake package deal from the desert. What are you going to do with them? Man, I got one question for you, though, Matt. When you went to Eugene, did you see the Bhagwan?
Repeat that again, Rob. I didn't hear you.
When you were in Eugene, did you see the Bhagwan? Didn't you see that documentary about the Bhagwan Rajneesh or whatever? That wasn't his community out there in Eugene or somewhere in Oregon?
Rob, I must not get enough culture in me because I don't know what the heck you're talking about.
No, Bo, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. But hey, let me just tell you this though. For me, it was a little bit of a culture difference because it's West Coast, a lot of homeless communities out there, a lot of tents. Literally, you get off you start to drive to the campus, and my son was like, "Dad, I've never seen this before."
Yeah.
His first paycheck, he had a tent tax from the state of Oregon, the city of Eugene.
Whoa!
So it was really, it was interesting philosophy. But then they had some terrific places to eat, and then traveled up to touch the Pacific Ocean. Went up to the dunes up near Florence.
Yeah,
had a terrific meal up there. Unfortunately, I stopped at the casino and lost all my money, but it was a great trip.
Like a good country music song coming up. I was drunk in Oregon in the sand dunes, and I lost all.
It was.
And the Ducks lost the game, so I decided to drink a Ham's beer. But hey, the intern has joined us right now, William Halliday, journalism major on the Auburn Plainsman staff down there. William, let's do this. Let's take a break. We got to pay the tent tax. We're going to be right back with the round table on this Friday, right after this.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
This round table going. We got Larry Bud Melman, brother Theodore, and the intern William Halliday with us on Friday's edition of Sidelines. And I'll tell you what, I was just curious though. Eugene in that area out there, it is beyond beautiful. It rains a lot and all. Then you've got Bend where the Cascade and the mountain. I mean, and that's incredible duck hunting out there, by the way. I would love to know this. Architecturally, and my dad's listening, he's probably going to shoot me down for this, but the original design of a stadium was the Roman Colosseum, just straight up. Outson Stadium, I think, is built straight up. And I think my dad has said this, him being an architect, once you get above 55 or 60,000 people, from that deal, and you start going up this way, what are you really gaining? Because ask anyone that's had to play at that beautiful rendition of Gothic style architecture, Kansas State, their stadium, or Autzen Stadium in Eugene, Oregon. Some of these old stadiums like that, they are really difficult, and they're not more than 50 and 60,000 people. But do they blow duck calls? Because if they do, I need to hook them up with the Richentone people in Stuttgart with Jim Runquist and the people there, because I can imagine 60,000 people blowing duck calls would drive you out of your mind.
Rob, you make a good point about the capacity. And the thing I heard when I was there taking a tour with the football stadium specifically is they would like to put some more money in maybe like the stadium luxury boxes, those type of things. That wouldn't necessarily improve or add to your capacity, but would improve to the site. But yeah, it's it's not straight up. It's more of a oval. I mean, I'm not an architect like your father, but it's a. I got to tell you, it's their atmosphere there. It got loud, and at the end of the third quarter, they do a tradition, because I don't know if you realize this. Back in the day, the Belushi movie Animal House, was filmed up in that area. I'm not sure on their campus, but like they do a rendition in between the third and fourth quarters. They play the Otis Redding shout video on the screen.
Oh, I love it.
Everybody's doing shout. It is unbelievable. Bo, I don't know if you've ever been there, but
I've seen it. It's great.
It's terrific.
Yeah.
Otis is there every home game.
I love it. Listen, there are three great movies. When Butch Thompson, Auburn's baseball coach, was taking Auburn out to Corvallis last year for the Super Regional, I said, Coach, three great movies, some of them which have been made into sequels, were filmed in and around the Eugene, Corvallis area. Number one, the oldest, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
I didn't know that.
It's filmed out there at the State Mental Hospital. Number two, Friday the 13th. And number three, Faber College, Dean Wormer, was filmed at Oregon State University. So that says a lot about the character of that area. I mean, and it's people I know that go out there that have run on that track or whatever. You just don't know until you go. But Matt, the takeaway from something you said a few minutes ago is as demonstrably simple as I've ever heard. Now I'm leaving on a jet airplane tonight with air travel as it is. Now, granted, basically nowadays you're just flying in a tin can with wings. Can I have some food with my plastic, please? Service is out the window. The Russian woman over, would you like? Niet. We have nothing. But your recruiting base is the entire country, because you're not further than 5 or 6 hours max from anywhere to recruit a kid. If you don't understand that, then you keep shaking your head at why Oregon is winning the way they are. And that's not going to change, because they're not going to be getting less money. The intern, William Halliday, trying to join us right now. He's climbing up there on the telephone pole trying to get that signal in there. But I got to ask you this now. I'll start with you, Bo. This talk, Florida State's athletic director, he's fired not one, but multiple shots over the bow. And Matt, we've talked about this as well. They need money at Florida State. Mm-hmm. They're looking at the grant of rights through 2036, and it's not going to pay them anywhere close to what the SEC and the Big Ten are receiving. Maybe not even what the Big 12 is getting, or the Pac-12. And Clemson has felt that way. I love the ACC. When it comes to basketball, it's the conference that traditionally it's the best. Bo first, here it is. Do you think in the next couple of years there's going to be a seismic change, huge change in what the ACC is? Are they going to break apart like the Big East did? At one time, they were the king of college basketball, live at the Garden in Madison Square Garden with their tournament. That was as good as it gets. And we're going to see them go by the wayside? I hope not.
Me neither. Matt probably agrees with this too. I think Clemson sees what South Carolina's getting from the SEC as far as they pay out every year, 48, 49 million, and then they're stuck at 30 million for TV rights. And they have signed that long-term contract. They're pretty much stuck in that unless they renegotiate or whatever. But Rob and Matt, you guys probably aware of this too. It wasn't a lot said about it publicly, but Florida State was going to be the 12th team in the SEC in 91. When Arkansas came in. And, the Gators sort of politically said, So they picked up South Carolina.
Well, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I remember coaches in the SEC like Pat Dye were like going, we want Florida State in the SEC.
Mm-hmm.
Because let's face it, now their fan base in the Florida Panhandle, I mean, the land of jorts. It's not just Gainesville. There's jorts are all over Florida. But they wanted to be in the SEC. Their fan base did. But Bobby Bowden famously said, there's more than one way to skin a cat. And I don't think it's going to be very easy to do that. Not that it's easy anyway, playing Auburn and Alabama and LSU plus Florida and Georgia every year. So they went to the ACC. But you know what? At the time, guys, a lot of people said it was because of the basketball money. Ain't no way in hell that basketball money's ever going to be more than the football money, gentlemen. Matt Dean, the question, again, we're going into the McLaughlin group. Matt Dean, your thoughts on this?
Well, first of all, at the time, Bobby Bowden was king of not just the state of Florida. I mean, look at how they were winning recruiting wars. He's won multiple, his championships there.
Yeah.
You can't argue at the time. And then who probably knew, Bo, 25 years ago, the TV money we'd have today? I mean,
amazing.
It's
Bo knew. Bo knows.
Oh, probably knew.
I wish.
And I still got to get Bo a copy of that 1934 football in the old Southwestern beat.
Need to bring it over one time.
I need to. But I think the bigger question is, and we talked about this on the AD angle a little bit yesterday, Rob. I brought up the point. This time of year is really it's kind of a no-win for ADs on the basketball side, because if your basketball team's winning, you're trying to keep your coach. And if your basketball team's losing, everyone wants to fire your coach, right? So, My gosh, you're always in a tough spot. So football at Florida State has always been king, but Leonard Hamilton has had a nice run. Mm-hmm. But the money has always been in football, always will be in football. So when you're late to the party, man, and it's a VIP event, Florida is going to block that opportunity every time they can. I don't know the politics that's working right now, but Florida State's not getting in the SEC. I mean, it's not going to happen. So how can you align yourself with the next best thing? It's not the Big Ten. I don't know what they do. I mean, I don't have an answer. The ship has passed by for them.
You know what Florida State could do? I'm going to throw this one out there.
Okay.
They could say, we're not going to play you anymore if you don't let us in the conference. Now, the state legislature may force them to do that. But, I don't know if that ship has sailed or not. But if you bring in Florida State and you bring in Clemson to the SEC, are you, in effect, to use the term, bringing sand to the beach?
Well, here's the thing I will say about Florida State. They're not going away in football.
No.
Michael Bell's got them going up in an upward trajectory. It wouldn't shock me if they're in the college football playoff this year. I don't think it'd shock you guys either.
No.
You know what you do? You just keep winning. You keep winning,
exactly.
You keep winning. And at the end of the day, that's going to increase your donation pool. And like Bobby Bowden said, there's more ways to skin a cat. So I don't think it's a terrible thing for Florida State. I think they're going to win on their own. I think they have a great football coach right now. I have really good friends on that staff.
Yeah.
And the thing about it is 2 years ago, we were all worried that Norvell was in trouble with Dion. We'll see what Dion does in Colorado. That's going to be interesting.
Well, bottom line is you start looking. William, let's bring you in here right now. Young sports writer on here with Matt Dean, Bo Carter. What are you writing about right now? Let's first off, we're talking about conference expansion and all, because there's a lot of interest in that. We've been today talking a lot of basketball with Coach John Brady, Jason Caldwell. It's grind time right now. Auburn, Tennessee tomorrow. I don't know. You watched the way Auburn played the other night. They're not going to lay down against anybody. The only really nightmarish game they've had this year was the Kentucky game. It just had a meltdown. But talk real quick about what you think is going to happen here in a minute or two. And I got a bunch of questions for you and some questions from some listeners. William Halliday, the intern, with Larry Bud Melman and Brother Theodore here with you on the Friday Roundtable. William, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry.
Yeah, I think.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So right now I'm writing. We're heading into the SEC tournament. I'm going to write.
Oops.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm not sure. He's having some technical issues today. So
preview
William,
for the first game for
Yeah.
Auburn. That's what I'm going to be writing.
Okay. All right. So you're kind of losing you in and out right now, but bottom line, Auburn doesn't win that game tomorrow. I don't know if they're going to the NCAA tournament. I think it's that big a game. You don't want to use the term must win too many times in a season, but this is a gotta win game. How about that for both teams? William? All
Okay,
right.
now I can hear you. It keeps going in and out. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Well, we may have to just drop it and do it another day. We'll try it again, but it's a must win for both Auburn and Tennessee. It's a must win for Arkansas. It's a must win for Mississippi State. There are a lot of teams, Arkansas, and you look at that team right there. John Brady said, hey, a lot of people think they've got a couple of lottery picks on that roster. And he goes, I coached several lottery picks. They didn't go out and have 6 or 7 points on a game night. They were, 20 and 12. I mean, consistently. You didn't have to worry about those guys. I think Arkansas has had more success the last few years than anybody getting to the Elite Eight. But anyway, you think Auburn can pull it off against Tennessee?
Yeah, I think they can. They've shown to do well at home, especially on their home court. And obviously, Auburn has probably one of the best fan bases in the nation, especially at home. But I think they could definitely pull it off if Tennessee has a poor shooting night, because we saw that in the last game that they played together. So as long as Auburn just gets their crowd rolling, they could probably pull off a win.
Yeah, Zakai Ziegler being out won't help them, but they got a lot of mature players on that team. Let's go back up with you, Matt. I want to start with you. At this point of the basketball season, SEC, ACC, Big Ten, Pac-12, Big 12. Big 12 is the best conference in America. Is it a battle between number 2 for SEC versus Big Ten, or is there another conference we're not talking about? I mean, we're going to have some good basketball now with the Sun Belt Conference. In football, I mean, they're capable of beating anybody. But Jason Caldwell in the first segment said, right now, basketball is so wide open, this could be the year of the mid-majors. You agree?
I do, and I've even mentioned a team like St. Mary's College making a run. Really well coached. Randy Bennett's done a terrific job there for a long period of time. I also think I watched Purdue a little bit last night. It was just, you play at Wisconsin. It's such an ugly game. And Purdue they still have the big guy, Zach Edney, down low, and they got some good perimeter shooting. They've lost a little bit of their luster to me. After the Big 12, and what's the old saying? Death, taxes, and Bill Self winning the Big 12 championship. I mean, it's like those are the three things. I do think we don't talk about UCLA and Arizona enough, guys. I think they're terrific. I love Mick Cronin. I've known him for a long time. His teams are tough. They play physical. They play defense. They will guard the ball. They'll guard off the ball. They'll get back in transition defense. They do everything you need to do to be a successful basketball team when you don't make shots. And in my opinion, getting back to Tennessee, Tennessee doesn't need to win against Auburn. If they get a double bye, great. If not, their biggest thing is figuring this out without Sakai. And I think the other night, it happened literally in the first 5 minutes of the game. I thought it was great for them to grind out a win against Arkansas because Arkansas needed that win too. Kind of like you're talking about Auburn. They need to accumulate some wins as well. So I think Tennessee is that team that if they shoot the ball at all in the NCAA tournament, they're a tough out because they guard you every time you step on the field.
Well, Bo, in Dallas, headquarters of the Big 12, that league, Kansas State, TCU did pretty well in the tournament last year. And and Matt's right about UCLA. It's the sleepy league. It's because most people all of us, those games are late at night, and some people don't like staying up late at night listening to Bill Walton. I do. I think he's great. I enjoy him. Reminds me a lot of Tom Snyder on the Late Late Show. Remember Tom Snyder? That was a good show. But damn, Mitt Cronin, you're right, came from Cincinnati. God, he's a tough, hard-nosed coach. And what I don't understand, I guess it's because the games are later. Next year in the Big Ten, or in a couple of years, when UCLA and Southern Cal join, okay, Big Noon is the big primetime kickoff for the Big Ten game.
Yeah, it is.
You're going to have to start playing. Southern Cal is hosting Michigan at the Coliseum in Los Angeles. That's going to be, 9 a.m. 9 a.m. Pacific time. Okay. The walkthrough, the Trojan walk, is going to be at 6:45 in the morning. How many people? That's going to be brutal. Okay. So we got to think about this with TV. There's only so many, are they going to take over Friday? Then they interfere with high school football. That's a discussion for after the break. We'll be right back with the round table, the oracles of Delphi, right after this. All right, Larry Bud Millman, Brother Theodore, and the intern on here with you on this Friday. Shoney, one of our listeners, Valdosta, Georgia, says to me, Rob, that's kind of mean of you putting the intern on Friday morning. Odds of him having a bad headache after Thursday night are pretty good. But I don't think it's that. I think it's the interweb and the metal plate in your head. I turn it just to the right. When Cousin Eddie's over, get him to do like this. We get free direct TV all the time. William, got to get your thoughts on this. There's a lot of talk about, college being ruined by NIL, transfer portal, and all that. You're a student at Auburn. The surprise, the phenomenon, and was it you? Billy Roberts yesterday brought it up. The Stanford basketball coach, the women's basketball coach, kind of making some remarks, kind of negative about why so many college boys and college, are so excited about gymnastics and all. Well, LSU's coming to town. It's not like they got, Mildred out there. You got Olivia Dunn. She's got 16 million Instagram followers. It's crazy. But what about gymnastics at Auburn? Suni Lee's there. They got a pretty good team. Do you and your friends ever go to gymnastics meets?
I'm going to be honest with you. I haven't been to one this year, but I have watched a few of them on TV on the SEC channel, and they're fun to watch for sure, especially when Suni Lee grabs a 10 from the judges. So
yeah, and I don't think there's anything more, biased or subjective than the judging. William, you're too young to remember the Olympics, the East German judges, the Russian judges. I mean, the girl could fall down off the thing at 10, but I just was curious about that. But I think it's all about the free market. My wife was saying you can't make women watch women's sports and you can't make men watch women's sports. And Bo, this totalitarian top down, everybody needs to be doing this or that or watching this. It will never work. When or maybe if is more like it, are people going to realize, get out of the way, let the free market decide? And I think, Bo, I'm going to throw this to you, Bo, and then Matt. I think the NIL in a few years, maybe sooner, it's going to be just like the Olympics. You'll have your Mary Lou Rettons, your Michael Phelpses, your Mark Spitzes, Dick Button, Dorothy Hamill, Scott Hamill. A few of these people will do it. But as Billy Roberts said yesterday, women's tennis. Now, look, that's where the money is, okay? People love, Poroskova and Chrissy Everett. As Billy said, she made $100 million combining great looks with great tennis. That's a great combination. Like real estate, location, location, location. Your thoughts? Bo Carter, Larry Bud Melman is waiting to hear from you.
Totally agree, Rob. Briefly, Texas Tech had the best idea of anybody, except for Miami's kind of funny business over there. But I think Tech gave $25,000 to every scholarship player, lineman, defensive backs, the whole thing. And that's where there's going to be some homogenization. Either they're you just can't have a quarterback making $3 million and a lineman making $500 on him. And Matt probably agrees too. You're going to have some disparaging there or whatever too. Rob, by the way, going back to Matt's point a minute ago, watch out for those Vanderbilt Commodores if they beat Mississippi State in a game or two. Of course, Liam Robbins, their great big man, got injured. I think he's out for the season, but they are Stackhouse might have a little magic left in those suits he wears.
But Stackhouse, I watched him at North Carolina, at the Grizzlies. He is building something strong at Vanderbilt. That win over Kentucky for senior night the other night was impressive. And before we go back to Matt real quick, met a new listener to the show, Jordan Colbert. He is native of Oklahoma. His father played at Oklahoma on the team with Steve Owen in the mid-'70s for the Sooners. Let's just say he is doing backflips ready to get into the SEC. And his reasons, and I'm excited about Oklahoma being in 51 conference championships, 7 Heisman winners, 7 national championships. But he made a point I think you would agree with, as I do, and Matt does, and I'm sure William does. They're now going to be able to go out and recruit the kinds of defensive players, especially on the line, the front 7, they have not been able to attract the Big 12. That's where people better wake up, because if you understand anything, understand this. Boomer Sooner Nation has a ton of money and a passionate fan base, and they will do whatever it takes to win in every sport there is. You're on the clock. Agree or disagree?
Matt, after you.
Well, I can't argue with those numbers, and that's what's happened historically. And we've already seen a little bit of spike in their recruiting. Not that they don't have top 5, top 10 classes, but they were up there again. I'm not sure who was 1, but I think they were in the top 5. I could be wrong.
Number 6 in the country.
Yeah, 6. I'm sorry. I was close. And here's the thing, too. I want to go back to Olivia Dunn. How cool is it that we can – the beauty of NIL, I know we've had a lot of arguments, a lot of debates, but if you want to build your brand and you have a unique niche and she has a unique sports she participates in, good for her. If Bryce Young can do Dr. Pepper commercials, good for Olivia Dunn. I'm just telling you, I think it's wonderful. I want to see more women athletes build their brand. I'm a longtime women's coach. Just an outstanding thing for the women's student athletes. Now, getting back to Oklahoma, it's going to be real interesting if Venables is able to get those D linemen you're talking about. Because, we have not seen probably the physicality from that group going back a ways. When I'm thinking of the Selman brothers, I'm thinking of some of the defenses with Bosworth in the Barry Switzer days. Now, when Stoops was there, they had a ton of success. And Stoops is a defensive player himself, so you saw both sides of the ball. Now, Lincoln Riley was an offensive guy. So Venables is a defensive guy. So I could see Oklahoma building just a really incredible defense that presents a lot of people in the league problems. And I don't know how you go through the gauntlet there, guys, with Oklahoma and Texas coming in. It's just going to be who's going to be able to predict who's going to win. Every day is going to be just a really incredible struggle to win on the road, I think.
Yeah, I think with Oklahoma and Texas coming to the league, it's going to be like, you're really a smart kid, but your professors or your teachers at school don't really challenge you and push you. All of a sudden, because trust me, I was told to take music appreciation my sophomore year at Auburn. Somebody told me, one of the older brothers at the fraternity house said, Browne, it's clap for credit. It's an easy A. The first day of class, the professor walked in and she goes, now I know that a lot of you are in here because you need an easy 5-hour A. It's not going to happen. We're going to learn everything about Tchaikovsky, Beethoven, Mozart, B minor, altos, the Deus, blah, blah, and we're like going, oh, God. Let me just say that I snuck out of there like a snake just under the door. I didn't look, there are no easy A's, but I think it's going to turn Oklahoma and Texas into raging maniacs. They've been bored out of their minds for a while, and they're about to go crazy. But let me ask you this, Bo. You're out there, and I'm going to throw it to William because I got another one for the intern. Do you agree with that? Are the Oklahoma people? Now, there's going to be a learning curve. I'm not saying there's not. But, Texas has a winning record against every school in the SEC except one school. And, Bo, if you can tell me that one school that in the SEC that has a winning record against Texas in football, I will get you, the next time I see you, a 30 rack of Ham's beer. The beer you've been looking for since 1865, born in the land of sky blue waters. Ham's, the beer you're looking for, the official beer of the Cherry Farm.
You won't believe it. It's the Fighting Commodore 7-2-1.
Oh, see,
Matt, and
Ham's is your man.
Yeah, and here's a history lesson for William. Vanderbilt and Texas played the state fair game in the 20s. That now has become Oklahoma, Texas since 1930 until the present day. But that was the big deal. Dan McGugan, the old Vanderbilt coach, recruited real heavily in Texas by rail then or whatever too. So it was a lot of fun. But yeah, I think I totally agree on the learning curve. It's going to be a tough battle for the first 2 or 3 years. They're going to have to really go out and recruit. There are no gimmies in the SEC, as you know, and it's going to be interesting. I don't know where the SEC, and Matt might agree with this too, they might load Oklahoma and Texas up with some pretty tough opponent. How they do with the rotating opponents. That's going to be a big F right there too.
Yeah. Hey, by the way, Dave Cody just texted this in from Bellingham, Washington. I took rocks for jocks at Auburn, but got the head of the geology department and made a D. William, let me just ask you this. William, here's a question for you now. As a young writer, I know you got some questions for Bo Carter. Bo teaches journalism. Matt is an AD, associate AD now at Rhodes College. Between the two of them, their combined IQ is 327 points. So, as they say, axe away.
Well, it's all Bo.
But William, I know you got some questions for a good story, a good bump, a good lead, whatever, LEDE. But go ahead with the questions for Bo Carter.
Well, first I want to mention Mr. Carter. I never thought Vanderbilt was that good to beat Texas at that point. The only time I remember them being good was when they had Jordan Rodgers, Aaron Rodgers' little brother, and that was when I was younger. I guess what question I have is how do you formulate questions for the people you go to press conferences for? How do you get those in your head to know what to ask when you get there?
Good question, William. By the way, too, don't forget to go by Sonny Lee's dorm and propose to her before she leaves to go.
I saw that.
She's starting her Olympic training at the end of this quarter. So get over there and get down on a knee and present her a ring, and she can pay for the ring.
She'll buy the jeweler.
No, that's right. She'll own the jewelry shop. But getting back to your question, great question. Usually, the good thing, go on the internet, check media guide. You probably haven't seen many media guides. They're a thing of the past now. But do your research, check on stuff, look at trends. The Tennessee losing Zakai Ziegler or whatever, too. Some things along those lines. Rick Barnes' history. He coached at Alabama with Wimp Sanderson, which is kind of, we always used to kid him around about what would Wimp say. he overcame that hurdle to do well at Texas and Tennessee. But yeah, mainly do your research, know your players, and a major faux pas. And Matt's probably seen this before. Please, in your stories, don't put, when asked by Bo Carter what he thought about Auburn football, Rob Brown. That is the major. I don't know. Don't ever use when asked. I see it every day in the Dallas Morning News and major newspapers. Please just say, use a quote and go from, or use a paragraph before that and say, Tennessee coach Rick Barnes had these, thought his defense played well, comma, close quote. It's please avoid the crutch of when asked. It's Matt and Rob remember.
Yeah, I tell you another one, William, that was up on the wall on the set at Channel 3, WRBL News 3 on your side on 13th Street in Columbus, Georgia. Avoid saying the following. Number one on that list was, as you can see, you're already looking at it. Matt, you've been interviewed by a reporter or two in your day. What would you tell William are some good questions to ask that are different that'll get a coach to go, hey, that's a good question.
I think Bo hit it on the head. When you do your research, you know the plus and minuses of any team, right? Going into an interview with the coach. Also, I will tell you this way. I think a lot of us coaches have an affinity to see young reporters like yourself succeed, right? So as long as you don't increase the temperature of the room with controversial things, I think it's going to be a smooth interview. I would never use the word failure to a coach because we don't handle it well, even though we know we have a lot, right? But I'm an old journalism major myself. I was a B news major in college, and I worked for my mentor was a man named Rod Vall, our student newspaper editor, supervisor, and the lead is so important. I think we were always looking for a great headline, and Mr. Vall didn't want it to be too long. He wanted to have a nice catchphrase in the headline that would attract the reader's attention. And as you already know, the who, what, why, where, when, how. I mean, you've got to encapsulate in that first 30 to 50 words what really happened. And then from there, you go to the body of your story. So I had to, ironically, I had to do a couple stories for our women's basketball and men's basketball playoffs this past weekend. So one of the things that's Bo's referenced is the AP style book. I mean, I think that's something you really have to. I see you shaking your head. I just think it's very important. Even for an old guy like me that hasn't written a story in a while, I have to go back and I still have mine. So I'm sure it's much more updated, Bo, than it was when I had it 30 years ago. But it's just so important to know your subject matter too. And the last thing is, there's no reason to be nervous. A lot of us coaches can be kind of abrasive, but if you don't challenge us with things that relate to some controversial topics, then you're going to be okay. Now, as you grow in your career and you get a little older and you have a lot of success, you're going to probably have to ask those tougher questions that both partners asked. And then you've gathered a little bit of respect for the room, and it's easier to ask those questions. Is that part right, Bo? I don't know.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
William, here's another one from Dave Cody. Of course, we've all known, Bo and I have known Dave a long time, accomplished TV sports anchor, journalist. He says two things. Avoid, quote, dead body. A body is dead. Okay. And with closed caption sponsored, we add to spell correctly. Ever tried to spell Manchaca, pronounced Manchac? I mean, this is wow, that's a town, I bet you, in Louisiana. But I agree with what both of these guys said. Ask questions and the coach looks at you, William, and says, damn, that kid's doing his homework.
Yeah.
Hey, put God first in everything you do. Go out and help people with the expectation of getting nothing in return. Don't give to get, give to give. Awesome roundtable. William, took a few minutes to get you on there with us. We'll get you back on next week. The intern, Matt Dean, Bo Carter, Coach John Brady, Jason Caldwell. To all of our listeners, everybody from Jonesboro to East Street and Franklin Street in Austin, Texas, and everywhere in between. Y'all have a great day. Follow us on Twitter at sidelines_live and hit that orange Patreon button at the top of the sidelines.live webpage. IPTAM, I pay $10 a month. We're growing. We need you. We'll see you tomorrow. Great job, guys. That was